If you choose to send billing statements to customers out of CenterPoint, you have the choice of either printing the statements or emailing the statements. An emailed statement would go as an attachment to an email. You can choose different print email options for different customers. There's no specific preference to set up for the printing of billing statements, but there are two preferences that you'll need for the setup of the emailing of statements, and one preference for how you want to handle the aging of statement balances that will appear on the billing statements. To set these preferences, we're going to go to File and Preferences. Under Email Setup is where we're going to set up the email preferences, and the first one is found under the label called Email Setup, and you'll set this one on the Database tab. This setting is used for the emailing of all documents out of CenterPoint. So whether it is a billing statement, a customer invoice, a sales order or purchase order, you're going to need this setting. So if you've already set it up, then you don't need to reset it. If you need help with setting up this setting, then you can refer to the video on it by going to the Help button in the bottom right portion of this screen. It's handled in a separate video. Then you'll also need the setting for billing statements, which is underneath the same section. This is where you'll want to compose a generic email that can be used for sending out the billing statements to all customers. The billing statement itself will go as an attachment to this email. So you'll notice in my subject line, I have monthly billing statements for, and then there is a field labeled in blue. That blue field is a form field, and it allows me to somewhat customize this email. So by adding in the form field called customer, it's going to change the text of the subject line to customize it with each customer's name. If you want to insert additional form fields into your email, you just need to position your cursor where you want a form field and either hit the left square bracket on your keyboard or click the Fields button, find the field you want to insert, and double click on it to insert it into the email. When you're done with all of your settings, you can click Save. But before I click Save, I also want to talk about the setting that has to do with aged balances, which can be found underneath Customer Invoices. There's a section called Aging Periods. These are our default aging periods, but some people want to expand or make smaller these different aging periods. So you can customize those. So for example, if I wanted that first aging period to be 1 to 45 days, I could type in 45 and hit Tab, and it changes the next period to be 46 to 60. So you can define what your aging periods are. I'm going to change mine back to 30. And now that I've set all of my settings, I'm going to click Save. If you want your emailed billing statements to come from a specific email address that may be different than the email address that other documents such as a sales order or purchase order come from, then you can indicate that by going to Setup and General and Email Addresses. You'll need to put in a name and then the email address that you want that billing statement to come from. And in the column labeled Billing Statements, you'll make that email address be the sent from. If the email address you need is not on the list already, you can put in a new one on the blank line. When you're done, you'll hit Save. On each customer record is where you will identify the kind of statement that the customer will receive, as well as whether or not the statement should be printed, emailed, or both. To do that, we'll go to Setup and Customers, and I'm going to edit one of my existing customers and go first to the Accounting tab. This is where you'll find a field labeled Billing Statement Type, and you can select from either Balance Forward or from Open Item. Under the Email and Print tab is where you can determine whether or not the statement should be emailed, printed, or both. If you're emailing the statement, you'll need to put in the person's name, their email address, and in the column labeled Statement, you'll set them to the Send To. You could add additional names and email addresses and make them either be the carbon copy or blank carbon copy on the email. If you wish to print the statement, underneath the section called Print Options, you'll want to set Print Customer Statement set to Yes. Okay, so if you want to print it, you'll set it to yes. If you don't want to print it, you'll set it to no. If both are selected, then they will receive an email, but you'll also print out a statement for them. If only the email is selected, only the customer will receive the email. If only the printing is set, then you'll only get a printed copy of it. And if neither are set, you'll get the customer won't receive an email and you won't get a printed copy. Some of these settings can be set underneath using the mass update option for multiple customers at one time. When you're done with your settings on the customer, you could click Save, and I'm going to close out of that screen. And then finally, where we generate the billing statements from can be found underneath Processes, Sales, and Billing Statements. The billing statements that get emailed need to be of the type that is a plain paper type of statement. So I'm going to select this one at the top. You're going to choose your date range for those statements, whether or not you want all balances, positive balances, negative balances, or all non-zero balances. You're going to choose whether or not you want balances to be greater than a particular value. Do you want to include all aged balances, or do you want only specific aging periods? Are you just printing this for statements that are past due? Well, you might want to choose just those aged balances. Do you want to include only current activity on the statement? Yes or no? Do you want to select a specific group of customers? You can do that with the customers filter. You can select what company or funds you want to send these statements for or produce these statements for. There is a place on the statement for you to put in a message. I've typed in the message, have a great day, so we'll see that, or have a nice day, and we'll see that on the statement when we produce it. If you've imported your company logo, you can have the system show that logo on the statements. And there's also a place for you to put in a header on the statement. And I put in the header text monthly statement. So again, we can see that on my statement. I'm going to set these last two settings to no just for now, and then we'll come back to those. I'm going to go ahead and preview the statements. On the statement, you're going to see your company information up at the top right or the top left portion of the statement. Then you'll see the customer's information. Mine just doesn't have an address because we didn't put it in because we email the statement to this customer. You'll notice that this is where my header text appears, and then this is where that message that I put in appears. On the statement itself, you'll see the beginning balance for that customer, and then you're going to see any of the activities. So I had payment activity, and I had a new invoice. At the bottom of the statement, you're going to see your aged balances. Now, you'll notice on this statement that my payment doesn't show me what invoice got paid, and my invoice doesn't show me any of the details. Those were those additional filters that I set to no. I can get back to those filters by going to Filters, and you'll notice that those are the ones that say Show Invoice Detail No and Show Payment Detail No. If those aren't on your list of filters, you can go to More Items button and put check marks in those so that they will appear here. I'm going to set both of those to yes, but you don't have to do both of them. Now I'm going to refresh those statements, and you can see how this statement has changed. Instead of just showing the payment, it's showing which invoice was paid. And for the invoice, it's showing me all the details of that invoice. So if you want those details, that is a selection that can be made. Now to print or email these invoices, if I choose the print button up at the top, it's only going to print the statements. So I'm going to close the preview, and on this first screen, I had the abilities to select email print. And so when I select that, it's going to first bring up the default email that's going to be sent to these customers. I can make sure that that email is correct before I send this. And then I could click continue, and it'll bring up the printer that it's going to print these statements on. So if I need to change any of the print settings, I can. When I'm done, I'll click print. When all of the emails have been sent and the printed statements have been printed, you'll get a message saying that the process has printed or is completed successfully. And then I can close out of that screen.